Take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
CannabisRadio.com presents The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Hey, this is great, man.
Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Thursday, April 21st, 2016, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. We're coming to you again from the cafeteria at the United Nations building here in Midtown Manhattan, where it's day 3 of the United Nations General Assembly special session on drugs. This was called for by the Latin and South American countries that are suffering disproportionately from the crime, violence, and corruption that takes place in the war on drugs. And it's been an interesting event. We've got all sorts of audio to bring to you from the United Nations, but also from just some of the conversations and other activist events that have been happening here around New York surrounding this particular event. Coming up in this hour, you'll get to hear a panel discussion that took place at the Museum of Drug Policy, a temporary pop-up museum on Park Avenue, sponsored by the Drug Policy Alliance and Open Society Foundation. And it was the tail end of a panel discussion amongst clergy on how religious perspective needs to be taken into account and to adjust to these realities of the war on drugs. Also coming up, we've got a special performance by singer-songwriter John Forte, who performed at the Museum of Drug Policy. And then at the end of the show, I'll have for you a discussion that I just had with the Dagga couple, the couple in South Africa who was busted for their marijuana possession and use, who are now fighting their way all the way up to the Supreme Constitutional Court there in South Africa for their rights. And then we'll wind up the show today with a radical rant. I'll give you my take here on this 2016 United Nations General Assembly special session. Then in hour 2, Toker Talk Radio, we've got another special discussion. Here in the cafeteria, I got to sit down with 3 of the representatives from Jamaica. They discussed their perspective on this UN session. And then to wind up the show, I'm going to bring you my recording and highlights of the 420 celebration at 4:20 p.m. that took place at Dagga Plaza here in New York. Dana Beal, the famous hippie activist and the founder of the Global Cannabis March, was putting it on. Adam Eidinger from DCMJ showed up with the jail cell prop that they were using back down in Washington, D.C., and many activists from all around the country, including Mickey Norris, Pebbles Trippett, Adela Falk, Jody James, and more, all got a chance to speak with me there at the 420 celebration. It's been an amazing time here in New York City. Thanks for all of your support and sponsorship. You can always donate to the Russ Belville Show through PayPal, Russ at RadicalRuss.com. Your donations help keep this content free. We'll be right back after a couple of minutes. Got to pay a few bills, and we'll hear that panel discussion coming up next.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
When you are starting up a medical cannabis business, you want a fired-up lawyer who understands the needs of cannabis consumers. The Law Office of Lauren Vasquez is your fired-up lawyer for the cannabis industry. Visit her website, fireduplawyer.com, or call 1-855-MMJ-LAWS for more information. That's 855-665-5297 for Lauren Vasquez, your fired-up lawyer,
and advocate,
or email
Dr.
fireduplawyer@gmail.com.
To tackle the burning issues.
And I'm here to clear up the myths about cannabis and burn them away with science.
CannabisRadio.com presents a no-holds-barred platform that seeks to redefine and revolutionize the entire scope of the cannabis culture while opening the door for more to join the cannabis crusade.
Dr. Kevin Hill.
You can't ignore the fact that, like alcohol, most people who use don't have a problem. So I think that you need to think about policy in that way while educating people properly about marijuana. I think that's the way to go.
burning issues. Only on CannabisRadio.com.
Dr. Dabber, hurry! Its temperature is shooting past 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's burning up.
I'm afraid for this little guy, it's just too late.
What caused the problem?
Only Dr. Dabber can maintain the perfect temperature for a smooth-tasting, slower burn. This standard vaporizer lost all of its health benefits, sending it up in smoke.
So you're telling me that most vapor pens burn so hot they produce smoke, not vapor?
Correct. Keep away from those standard vaporizer pens and turn to Dr. Dabber. Doctor's orders.
Less heat, more flavor.
Activism begins with ACT. The Russ Belville Show features the stories of hardworking grassroots activists working for an end to prohibition in today's activist agenda.
So we have to end this drug war, right? We really have to end this drug war. What do you know for sure about what we need to do, what the Black church needs to do to end this war on drugs?
Well, what I know for sure is that the conversation we're having is not limited to the Christian church. And I want to lift up the words of Howard Thurman to say what is true in a religion is not true because it's in that religion. It is in that religion because it is in fact true. And so what the Proctor Conference and our team has been doing for the last several years is mobilizing an interfaith affirmation that we share common values around compassion and care and the opportunity to push and propel this historic moment to change the paradigm from one of mass incarceration to one of health and compassion in response to the drugs and the drug war or the drug problem, however people choose to define it. And what that means, in my mind, then, is that the Black church has to be present and participatory in a movement where the common tenets of compassion and care and help and humanity is lifted up as a response to dismantling this system of oppression. And so when we look around this museum setting we are in, we will see that drugs and the war on drugs has impacted every corner of the world and every social, economic, racial, ethnic, and religious tradition. And so I think it is therefore most important that we become intentional about organizing ourselves with other leaders of different faith traditions in order to dismantle this system and the collateral damage that's being done to families and communities all over the world.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I would add to it. So we need an intergenerational, multiracial, multi-faith movement for societal change. In other words, let's look at this hot mess of a culture and think about how I can point myself at the thing I have the capacity to do and equip you to do the same thing. Find the commonality. These things are interconnected, is what I'm trying to get to. These are poverty is connected to healthcare, is connected to overuse of drugs, is connected to stigmatization, is connected to, right, all of that. So I want to that's exactly right. I think the other thing that I would add to it then is something like our theology of critique, like what the world is unmerciful because we're not merciful. It kind of breaks my heart. It's like, I know a kid who came out, a young lady came out gay to her Black church when she was a teenager, and they put her out for coming out gay. And she's never sang at a church again until she came to my church and sang 20 years later. The same thing happens about sex. Good God Almighty. Does God really, what? So a theology that is ready to have a hermeneutic of such judgment seeps in our culture. So you transgress, and it's in the Black church and it's in the white church, and it's heavy. It's in Islam and it's heavy. It's in sects of Judaism and it's heavy. We need to lighten up and think about mercy.
Thank you. So we're going to turn to you for questions. Okay, so we can take 2 questions for our panelists. Any questions for the panelists?
And this is thank you, first of all, for such a powerful sharing. I've been taking copious notes. So this question is for anyone that wants to answer. There were a couple of points, one about the embodiment, the other about our trajectory of hope. And my question to you is in terms of strategies on the ground, whether you're looking at worship services, religious education, training of leaders in particular, the training of the seminarians. How do you see us going forward in getting these aspects about where hope lies and how we embody it, returning back to our African spirituality? How do you see that? And you can take any one of those on the ground, whether it's with clergy training, whether it's with the liturgies that we use. But if you would just share some of your insights and wisdoms on how we get it activated in those immediate locations of church worship, practice, education, and training.
Let me just start by saying I think one of the things we'll have to do is to be real clear about how we work to dispel the myths. One of my friends says sometimes about the world in which we live in, the society that we're part of, it's all made up. There's a way in which there are all these fanciful kinds of images of what success is and what achievement and accomplishment, what prosperity, what purpose, what meaning is. There are people in the church who have too often given us false kinds of understandings on that level. We have to be the people who are about doing the business of re-examining, looking critically at those things. It kind of makes me think about the Gerasene demoniac, the whole issue where it says, what is the name of this demonic force within you? And the response is legion, because it's manifested itself in so many ways. If we look at our community in terms of all the ways in which we're being bombarded by those negative realities, then we realize that what we're trying to counter is something that takes on different phases, that every day is being projected to us and upon us in ways that we find ourselves having to try to work our way through in a way that's not crippling to us on a day-to-day basis. So what I would suggest is that what's most important for us is to make sure that wherever we are in those safe spaces that we create, that a part of what happens in those spaces is a continual critique of the contradictions. I like the way, again, my favorite Howard Thurman quote is that none of life's contradictions are final. We're dealing with a lot of contradictions that are the byproduct of the experience of living in this culture of oppression. But we have to continue to be the ones that understand that that's not final, that might be a part of what has transpired along the way and where we might seem to be. But there are people every day who continue to create for us these distortions, these lies, and these myths that really are not about the truth. And the truth is bigger than all the facts that people can ever put before us. The fact might be that the analysis that comes from some of those who are doing the assessments of the problem that we're dealing with always seems like we're doomed and there's no way out. But there's a truth that's bigger than all the facts. And that truth is that we are one people who've been created by one God, irrespective of the names that we might call that God by and the ways in which we might experience the teaching. But we have to come up with the new ways of dealing with that.
And so in all those strategies you mentioned, from liturgy to how you develop ministries, etc., I would say that we need to think beyond worshiping ceremony. Too often we worship ceremony. Yeah. And we have to create space, environment, and strategies that allow individuals to excavate their truths, because it's in the telling of the truths of the personal narratives, such as how many of you are impacted by this mass incarceration. Please stand. And if the truth be known, most congregations would have most people standing. And rather than feel a sense of shame, we ought to feel a sense of courage and compatibility with one another to organize to dismantle that. And so that powerful just word truth on the back wall there is the beginning point for us, I think, not to worship ceremony, but in fact to begin to embrace the personal narratives, the suffering of the people that we are called to serve.
Wonderful. We have a second question.
I do, but mine's going to be based on the UK, but I'm looking for some direction in this. And so a black male in the UK is 7 times more likely to be stopped and searched than his white counterpart. 2/3 of the stops and searches are drug-related, are for drugs, but don't actually reveal drugs. However, throughout the whole criminal justice system, black people, on the whole, fare worse than their white counterparts. So our jails are full of black people, and in actual fact, a shocker for America is that proportionally, we jail more black people in the UK than you do in the USA. So get your head around that, and that 2/3 of that is apparently drug-related, even though the evidence is very, very clear that black people do neither ingest or sell drugs at any greater rates than their white counterparts. But what I'm coming to with this, so that's the sort of landscape and the background that we're working with in the UK. But what I'm coming to with this is back to the faith, the faith element of this, which is that our churches in the UK, and I'm not talking about a specific denomination here, I'm talking about multi-faith, still take a really punitive approach to drugs. So it's not even part of the narrative. The narrative hasn't really even started within our faith communities. And if I could ask, the question that I would ask is, what advice would you give to me in relation to where do we start that? Because that's what I'm trying to do in the UK.
That's such a great question. Where do we start? I have a playful thing I'm going to say, and please forgive me, but I wish some pastors would confess that they smoke pot, because they do. You go to religious retreats and places where pot's legal and they're getting down, honey. I wish we would stop pretending like alcohol isn't a drug, because it is, as is Ambien. So my thing is, where are the places we can set a conversation to be real? And it might be that you have to start first with clergy, because we actually go to seminary and get taught to have a really strong false self. We get taught to pretend like we're good and pretend like we're holy, and that you won't love us if we don't put that facade on, that you won't respect us if we don't put that facade on. And maybe there could be a space where clergy could be together. Maybe you give them a little weed, I don't know. But let's have them be in a safe space to kind of talk about what's at work. And that's the thing that I would start with, is what's at work is the church is fake about that, right? Of course human beings alter their reality with drugs of some kind. Running is when you get the endorphins. So let's get real. Maybe a little seminar with people. Maybe they do some real sharing. Maybe they create small groups of talking. Maybe they begin to think together about what's the curriculum for the clergy. We don't get that in seminary, to be honest. We don't get taught to be real in seminary. We don't get taught to the appropriate place of vulnerability, the appropriate place of authenticity. So that's one place. I think the other place is between police and clergy. I think the police. So again, my frame is we've all introjected. We've all taken in judgment as the way to deal with people. So if the police and clergy or police and lay leaders can get together and talk about why is there such a strong no about this. So then it really boils down to relationship and community organizing, which I think I was always talking about really well. Like, this is dismantling small groups at a time, one-on-one at a time. Those are my two ideas.
Okay, so thank you very much. Please join me in thanking our incredible, fantastic, amazing panelists, the Reverend Ed Sanders, Dr. Ivor Carruthers, and Dr. Jackie Lois. Thank you.
Boot to the head.
Ow, you booted me in the head!
Coming soon to a city near you, Cannabis Finance Boot Camp. Get all your cannabis accounting, legal, and compliance questions answered by their knowledgeable panel of industry experts who want to help your cannabis business boom. Whether you're a grower, dispensary operator, or a newcomer to the field, your cannabis business needs Cannabis Finance Boot Camp. For information on upcoming events, visit cannabisfinancebootcamp.com.
Growing green to generate more green.
Hello to all you happy herbalizers, smiling trippy hippies, and everyone who believes in freedom and tolerance. This is The Grow Show, and I'm Kyle Cushman.
From food to fuel, from remedy to resource.
Welcome my guest, Ed Rosenthal, the guru of ganja. Let me ask you, right now I hear your lighter clicking. Are you smoking indoor or are you smoking sun-grown?
What am I smoking? I'm smoking concentrate.
Way to get out of the answer there. So you're truly like the king, right? You just clap your hands and somebody brings you a bowl and you're all set, right?
I wish that were the case.
The Grow Show with Kyle Cushman, only on CannabisRadio.com. Great websites today need expert web design and development and need to be e-commerce ready and mobile friendly. But building a marketable and profitable website can be an uphill climb. Ready to make your new website or replace your existing website? Think Orange as the new way to get in the black. Orange Hill Development works with Fortune 500 companies and offer the same top quality development service at a fraction of what other providers charge. Brands like Absolute, Carlsberg, and Nestea trust Orange Hill Development. Find out why you should trust your website with Orange Hill. Contact Orange Hill for a consultation today at orangehilldevelopment.com.
Most of us pirates, we go on vacation to North Dakota, you know, because they've got a town called Argusville. What are you smoking there, boy?
This is Dan Michaels from danmichaelsaudio.com, and you're listening to Radical Russ on CannabisRadio.com.
I am honored to introduce Grammy Award-nominated John Forte, who you heard from earlier this evening, and who himself, of course, spent 7 years in federal prison as a result of a drug charge. His music speaks to his personal experiences, but more importantly, it speaks to all of us about the ways that we ought to engage with one another as human beings.
Thank you very much. This was the last song that I wrote in federal prison. It remains my favorite song to date. It's called The Breaking of a Man. I know you've seen the breaking of a man. You've taken all you can, as if the house we made was laid across the sand. Oh Lord, penalties for suffering can seem so hard. Dreaming the days when everything so dark. Tried to walk good, where does that road start? A show. John, thought exercise is sought out to advise and add on. I changed the thinking you so proudly had on this mobilizing effort. It picks up From where the best of the best came and left it, the treasure of truth I mix drinks within the booth. They can't be measured with youth. I break leaven with the 7 and let whatever produce my past estrange the light. If change is right, you can say the judge killed me and I came to life, a newborn like a neophyte. Fruitful love from the truth of life. This is the letter I don't need to write. Peace, see law, bless the stars. If I don't breathe the night, if I don't save you from yourself, maybe the Lord might. What I envision is better, steady, higher living from this system, though some dudes might be dead already. I graduated from a school where the minds varied to hold the burden, known to those that only time carries. This cherry blossom, a martial artist, studied the chi, written on gossamer, tutored by philosophers demonstrably. I deconstruct the subpar and put them back together like the monsters be. So how you want it? Obvious or subconsciously? If every man has a price, who sponsors me? We should do more than just drink responsibly. You see, even in the mountains, Lord John was free. I know you've seen the breaking of a man. You taken all you can, as if the house we made was laid across the sand. Oh Lord, penalties for suffering can seem so hard. Dreaming the days when everything's so dark. Tried to walk good, where does that road start to show? As fate would have it, they would have me talking savage like the average among us, and not confined to the youngest. I'm like the magical healer / masterful builder. I know the riddle of steel is in the hands of the wielder. They tried to shatter my leader, do bad to the breather. For living page 27 from the Bhagavad Gita. So when his time stopped, where he lay, read I'd rather be hated for what I am than loved for what I'm not. You can't subtract logic. I put tulips on his grave where we waxed philosophic from where the words we gave. Pay attention, it's a new day running. And it ain't coming cause it's here for the taking. This has been years in the making. I've spent years in the station waiting to make this entrance. I'm here to free the world, young star. What's your intention? This is warfare, youngin'. Lightning is flashing now. Tune in and let's see what's happening now. One way or another, it's going down. And I know you've seen the breaking of a man. You've taken all you can, as if the house we made was laid across the sand. Oh Lord, penalties for suffering can seem so hard. Dreaming the days when everything's so dark. Tried to walk good, where does that road start? A show, a show, a show.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
The Russ Belville Show is proudly sponsored by the Marijuana Business Association. The MJBA, called by NBC News the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, is the fastest growing business association in the fastest growing industry in America. I've been working with the MJBA for years, and I personally invite you to join the MJBA. MJBA also publishes the popular MJ Headline News on Facebook and the MJNewsNetwork.com and Marijuana Channel 1 on YouTube. Visit mjba.net for more details.
Georgia. Hi, this is Willie Nelson. Alcohol prohibition didn't work in the 1920s, and marijuana prohibition isn't working today. It's time we stopped arresting responsible marijuana smokers. It's the fair thing to do.
For more information, contact NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Call toll-free 888-67-NORML or visit their website at norml.org.
The next generation of vaporizers has arrived. Vuber vaporizers are blazing the way with unparalleled technology for oil, concentrate, or dry flower pens. Providing unsurpassed customer service and expert craftsmanship, Vuber vaporizers use cutting-edge technology, providing a power-packed, smoother vapor with a lifetime guarantee. Experience vaporizing the way it was meant to be. The Vuber way.
The cannabis community is a diverse set of people from all walks of life. Conservative and liberal, black and white, straight and gay, rich and poor, and everyone in between. Learn more about the people we are freeing from adult cannabis prohibition in our Cannabis Community Chat.
Good day, tokers and tokettes. Once again, I'm here in the United Nations cafeteria. And it just so happens that I've run into another set of international guests. I am here with the Dagga couple.
You said it correctly.
South Africa. I studied. I'm a radio guy. I have to learn how to pronounce things. So, Dagga, of course, we were speaking Jamaicans earlier.
Okay.
They call it ganja.
The ganja man.
But America, we just call it weed.
Yep.
But tell us your names and what the Dagga couple is all about.
My name's Myrtle Clark, and the Dagga couple was a term coined by the South African media after it hit the newspapers that we were arrested in our home on charges of possessing Dagga, and we decided to sue the South African government on charges of enacting unlawful laws. So the newspapers got hold of it, and that's how come we're called the Dagga couple.
And my name's Jules Stubbs. I'm the other half of the Dagga couple. And we had three choices, Russ. We could have either faced 7 years in jail for possession, because that's how it is in South Africa, or we could have paid a bribe, because that's how it is in South Africa. White people don't really get to jail in South Africa. We have some money, so we could have done that. But that would have given us a criminal record, and we travel a lot, so we would never have got a visa. We'd have a 10-year suspended. So you know what? We just fought it, and we're fighting it, and we've set a precedent in South African law, and now we're hobnobbing it at the United Nations. And 10 minutes ago, they wouldn't let me in because I have the word cannabis on my shirt. Whoa.
So we're having a conference on international drug policy, but we can't have the word cannabis be seen. My goodness, people might start talking about it.
That's right. I was absolutely incredulous. It happened this morning, and now today, because I've only got one shirt on and my hotel room's 20 blocks away, I still have the same shirt on. So you can see me perspiring here because I've had to put a hoodie over the top of it all so I stay legal, dude.
So your case got prosecuted and it's over?
No, we've only just kind of begun.
So it was in 2010 when this all started, but it's obviously been a long road since then. We're waiting now for a new date because it was meant to start in the High Court on the 10th of March, but then it was postponed again because we've got so many expert witnesses coming over to South Africa to testify. We need 20 court days. So now we're just waiting for our sort of the high legal beagles to organize a court date because it's going to be 20 court days. So we hope to, before the middle of the year, to announce the new court date so that we can move on. Yeah.
You mentioned briefly white people don't go to jail in
No.
South Africa for this. Kind of like America, you know.
It's kind
if
of
you
like
got the money.
America. However, it's a kind of a reverse situation in South Africa. We believe that most of the people that are arrested or intimidated or extorted are white people. It's kind of different. The arrest rate is higher for whites than it is for blacks, we believe, because white people have got more to extort from them. If you've got a nice car and you look as if you've got some nice clothes, then the cops go, we might be able to get something out of this, because a lot of this stuff just stops on the side of the road. Nobody goes to, you might get put in jail for the weekend, but during that weekend you might get the docket to disappear, you might get a tout lawyer to pay the right bribe to the right people. So that's what we mean. There's, for sure, the disparity in incarceration is the same as it is in the USA. There are more people of color in jails in South Africa than there are Caucasians, because most Caucasians manage to get their way out of it just with resources, basically. And I've personally sat in the South African jail on occasion 3 times, and some of the people that are sitting in there are just sat there because they don't have any bail. That's the only crime they've committed, is not having the amount of bail to post to get out. And Myrtle has just dealt with a Rastafarian man outside Cape Town. He was languishing in a police cell for 4 months because he didn't have, what is it?
1,500
100 US. He didn't have $100 bail, and now he's been there for 4 months.
Wow.
Oh, that's silly, isn't it?
How much possession amount does it take for these charges to get pressed?
Anything.
Any
We've seen convictions for 0.5 of a gram.
Oh, or as I like to call it, out of marijuana.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's just a gimmick in the bottom of your bag. We were actually we were arrested for we had a quantity of cannabis, but the law says that if you have over 115 grams, 115, you are a dealer. Does that sound like science to you, Russ?
115 grams is about 4 ounces.
Yeah, it's 5 ounces. Yeah, it's about 5 ounces. So if you have that on your possession, you are automatically a dealer, and now we're talking about some serious jail time.
Because if a guy has 3 cases of beer in his fridge, he's a beer salesman.
That's right. Yeah.
He couldn't be just stocking up.
No, not at all. Oh, the disparity, man.
And if you have 114 grams, you're not a dealer. But if you've got 116 grams, you are. So
at the time, we know that it's very easy to actually argue away these particular charges, because for there to be a dealing charge, there has to have been dealing. There has to be ganja, cannabis, Dagga, and money in exactly the same place at the same time. So what they do is they intimidate you on the spot, because a dealing charge is jail time. So once people are scared, they make stupid moves. And that's all the cops are waiting for you to do, you know. They're making you incriminate yourself just by them scaring the crap out of you.
Yeah, I saw a meme cartoon on Facebook the other day that showed the squirrel stopped in the middle of the road. And they say the squirrel goes 90% across the road and then stops, and what kills him is him trying to go back the other way. He says that's the same thing when people get caught with drugs, is they're the squirrel that stopped and they panic and they get themselves
That's a great
busted
analogy.
worse.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we see it time and again. And we've got a little booklet called Know Your Rights, because loads of people in South Africa don't actually know that there is a procedure. There's a proper procedure to be arrested. You have rights, and at that point when you're busted, people don't think they have any rights. So we produced this booklet, which is now version 4, and right at the very beginning it says, just shut up. Say nothing. Sign nothing. Don't wind them up. Just take it on the chin. If you get arrested on a Friday, which is modus operandi, you're not going to get out till Monday. That's how it is. They're going to put you in a jail for 3 days and punish you. The alleged cannabis user will now be punished in the state jail for 3 days. And at that point, the minute you start tuning the cops back, they're going to make your life miserable. You're not going to eat. You won't get any water.
So what's the status of your case now? And
Okay, so pending a new date in the High Court, and then obviously all evidence is led in the High Court, and then as our legal team say, well, once we're through the other side of the High Court, we can breathe a bit easier. Then it will most probably go through the Supreme Court of Appeals, and then onto the Constitutional Court, which is obviously the highest court in the land. And we've got some really amazing witnesses coming over. We have Donald Abrahams confirmed. We have Carl Hart confirmed.
Oh, that's great. We got the
yeah,
heavy duty,
so because we're not sick and we don't want to make socks. We just want to get stoned.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
we like being stoned. So that's the bottom line of our case.
We don't believe in recreational medical nothing. We don't see any distinction whatsoever. We are fit and well and healthy because we use the cannabis plant. That's it. And all the people that come to us at our non-profit company looking for cannabis as medication and they're sick, not one of them has a relationship with the plant. Not one of them. 400, 500 of them, all of them. They come to us because they're sick, because they haven't used their plant all their lives. So we're doing this from a human rights angle. It is our right to put whatever we want in our bodies, and it is enshrined in the South African Bill of Rights that is the case. But of course, it's not the case. Just like it is in your Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence. They've got all this blah, blah, blah about human rights, but, oh yeah, okay.
Well, you didn't see the asterisk at the bottom that says, except if it has to do with drugs.
Exactly. That's the caveat at the bottom,
right.
Yeah.
There's a tiny fine print those founding fathers put in.
Yeah.
So in South Africa, what's it like trying to change these laws? A lot of government oppression, a lot of them trying to turn this back.
There is no political will.
Not really. Not really. We kind of steer clear of the politicians. It's only been in the last sort of 18 months that we've started to engage with the broader drug policy debate and policy in general, because we're fighting this through the courts. You know, I don't know if you've seen South Africa in the news lately. Our president is not exactly the most popular person in the land because he spent $14 million renovating his private residence. So,
and he was found guilty by the highest court in the land. The judge president said that the president of the country is guilty of embezzlement. Wow. So he went on national television and said, "I apologize." Moving on.
Nothing happened.
Wow.
Yeah, true excuse me, but the story, can I say that my sister was there, said, this same guy in Zuma was accused of being raping the secretary. And said, what, did you rape your secretary? Well, didn't she like it? She got AIDS. But wash myself.
That's right.
So that is, we have a cartoonist called Zapiro, who's very famous for every time he draws the president, there's a little shower head sticking out the top of his head.
As a reference to the fact that he slept actually with a relative. It was a relative that he slept with, and he was unprotected sex, and he said, "Well, I had a shower afterwards." Yeah, so this is the leader of our country, and
so this is the person we're expecting to make science and evidence-based decisions
exactly.
on.
So that's exactly why we are not doing. Obviously, it's not the courts that change the law; it's the politicians that change the law ultimately. But we have to get this through the courts first, because one thing that it's about 2 weeks ago, the Constitutional Court judgment on the president, it gave us incredible confidence in our courts, in our judicial system. Yeah. It's really, really strong. We've got a strong set of judges on the Constitutional Court, and
we've got a strong
we're going to get there.
constitution.
We've got a very strong constitution. Actually, in Mexico, everybody knows about the 4 people in Mexico who got the judgment there. They used the South African Constitution there as an example for that case. And we've been in contact with the defendants in that case, and the South African Constitution is famous in the circles where constitutions are famous. It's like, yeah.
Did you have something?
No, just asking, what was the point in the Constitution that could help us out of the prohibition strategies? What is the point in the Constitution?
Well, it's just based on human rights. A very, very strongly worded human rights declaration, the South African Constitution.
Yeah, but they could always say we have to control drugs, etc. Is it as fixed in the Constitution?
You know the way that the Mexican judgment was worded was so poignant. It was the fact that if it's impossible for me to mature the way I want to and develop my personality if I can't use cannabis. I use cannabis in my life, and if I can't do that, I cannot fully develop my personality. That was the judgment. That's a very, very poignant thing to say, and I'm hoping a South African judge will say the same thing to me one day.
So we're hoping for a decision that recognizes a freedom of conscience.
Yes. You've got it in one. That's my fight. Cognitive liberty, the sovereignty of your body. Yeah. It's not rocket science.
Alexander Shulgin?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. If this is the border, and if I'm not the sovereign past this border,
completely.
Yeah. And also the whole principle of a victimless crime is also.
Our mantra actually on our stickers is, "I am not a criminal." Because I'm not. I'm a really hard-working, tax-paying person, but I happen to use the cannabis plant. So.
Check this out, folks. Go to the website daggacouple.co.za. I even said
Yeah,
Z.
nice. Not Z,
And that's
And
our non-profit
it's a non-profit company.
fieldsofgreenforall.org.za.
Yeah.
Which
Fantastic.
area of South Africa you come from?
We live in Johannesburg. I'm actually
How
an
was
Englishman. I'm an Englishman. I've been in South Africa for 25 years. It's my
Ah.
home. I don't do Europe very well. I do Africa very well. But on the other hand, it was very nice to leave Africa last week because, man, it can drive you crazy, that place. Huh? It's the Wild West.
Yeah.
It all happens all the time. That's one thing that does happen in Africa. Stuff. All the time. It really is a dynamic place, and you never know where you stand. It's a very brutal country. There's a lot of crime. There's a lot of murders. There's a lot of very angry, starving people, and it's been really cool to come to Manhattan. But I must admit, I was very, very surprised coming into a drug policy meeting to be told that I can't wear a cannabis T-shirt. That's just out to lunch. I'm sorry, folks. It's
Well,
just
it fits along with they held a UN session, a special one of the side sessions on youth, listening to the voices of youth in the drug war. There was not a single young person on the panel, and all the SSTP people who showed up, all the kids who showed up to go to it, weren't let in.
Right. Well,
Isn't that just how it is in this building?
It's like lots of stuffy old white men running the show, eh?
Yeah.
It is. But one thing I did hear on the first day was, for the first time ever, a president,
Yes.
not an ex-president, a real live incumbent president say, legalize already. And that was the man from Mexico. The Mexican president.
Did he really say legalize everything?
He said, no, cannabis. He said, we've gone past decriminalization now, just legalize this plant once and for all and let's get on with it. And I've never heard an incumbent president say that ever. So that was quite cool, but nobody actually reported it because it's too big.
This has been an amazing discussion with the Dagga couple. Check them out online, daggacouple.co.za. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Hey, Russ, it's an honor to come and see you because you keep us going in South Africa. We feel as if we're in a backwater. We're at the bottom of next stop Antarctica.
Yeah.
It's a long way from here.
Yes, it is.
So all of your writings and all of your words and your show is very important to us and to activists in South Africa because we consider you're on the front line. Because if there's going to be a blog post, it'll be yours first. You've always got the foot in the door first, so we commend you for that.
Well, thank you. I hope to visit South Africa, Johannesburg someday, and I'll give you a ring when I do.
Oh, no, you should.
Yes,
yeah.
please too. If you need a bed for the night, please come stay with us.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Hey everybody, it's Radical Russ here from 420 Radio, inviting you to be like me and get your ink done at Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo, Fort Worth's most female-friendly, clean, sterile, awesome tattoo shop. Thomas and his crew are true artists who can design you a custom piece or use a design you bring in. Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo also offers all styles of tattooing as well as piercings and all-around fun. In the DFW area, stop by Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo and tell them Radical Russ sent you. Trust me, it'll feel awesome.
NORMAL stands for Responsible Adult Cannabis Use. If cannabis use is causing problems in your life, consider taking a break or seeking medical assistance. Consider ceasing cannabis use if you have a family history of mental illness. Don't drive or operate heavy machinery while impaired by cannabis use. Cannabis use is not without risks, even though the risks may be far less than those posed by legal drugs.
Don't want to spend money on a night out, but don't know what to do other than watching TV or playing video games? Consider playing guitar, bass, banjo, or mandolin. The instrument will give you hours of entertainment with friends with minimal expense. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension downtown Corvallis at 120 Northwest 2nd Street today, or check out its inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com.
We must wage what I have called total war against public enemy number one.
I support a change in law. to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
That marijuana, pot, grass, whatever you want to call it, is probably the most dangerous drug.
Some think there won't be room for them in jail. We'll make room.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it and didn't inhale.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
Radical Rant.
Well, folks, it's been quite an amazing adventure here at the United Nations with all the events that are going on for the United Nations General Assembly special session on drugs. And I learned a whole lot about international politics while I was here. And that is, it is definitely the major leagues of screwed up politics. I just got to put it that way. This whole session began with the acceptance of a document, something they call the outcome document, that has already been voted on and already been accepted by the UN member states. So it seems a little odd that we'd start with the document, the finished outcome document, before we'd even determined the outcome of this 3 days of discussions. So we start with the outcome document, and then what happened for the next 3 days is most of the countries complained about it. See, the problem here at the UN is that they have to work for consensus on an international level. So we're talking about trying to get countries like New Zealand and Jamaica, places where there's a lot of use of cannabis and a fairly laissez-faire attitude toward it. And those countries have to be in the same discussion with countries like Singapore and Indonesia and China and countries that still execute people for drug crimes. Executions. We have such a variety, such a wide range, all the way from legalization in the state of Oregon to hangings in Saudi Arabia that have to do with this war on drugs. So trying to come up with any sort of consensus at the international level is damn near impossible. Many of the member states, especially the European Union, Canada, Jamaica, and others, Latin American countries, South American countries, a lot of them complained about how this outcome document in no way addressed ending the death penalty for drug crimes, which many of the speakers pointed out is against international law with respect to human rights, with respect to the rights of all people to be able to live, basically, the right to life. But then we have countries like Pakistan that would stand to support this outcome document and to point out that their right to run their judicial system any way they see fit is their right. It's their sovereign right. And that they complained about these UN drug meetings possibly trampling on their sovereignty of their judicial and criminal justice systems. So basically, you had countries like Pakistan and Indonesia standing up for the right to be able to continue executing people, despite the fact that it doesn't work. If it worked, they wouldn't need to be executing any people, now would they? So it is a bit frustrating, and other countries also made a lot of points about harm reduction. What's up? It's my friend Kevin Sabet. Made a lot of points about harm reduction, and that was also largely ignored in the outcome document. So when we're seeing countries like Canada, like the United States, countries in Europe that are employing successful harm reduction techniques where we can show through science and evidence that they are working, and we can also show that the contrary, the executions and the punitive measures are not working, then it just becomes incredibly frustrating to try to listen to 3 days worth of talks about this and recognize that they're not even talking about the real issues. Nowhere is this more clear than when they're talking about cannabis. But they weren't talking about cannabis very often at this event. Most of the talk that I heard around drugs at this event had to do with opioid epidemics, heroin and the synthetics that are pharmaceuticalized, as well as what they like to call NPS, and that stands for new psychotropic substances. or what we in the United States call designer drugs. So the designer drugs, this is when they take a chemical and they, like bath salts, and people get high on it. And so the government will say, okay, chemical XYZ is illegal. And so the chemists, they will just take the Z out and switch it with a Q, and now you got a new chemical that's not illegal, but it still gets you high. And country after country talked about the need to battle these NPS, these new psychotropic substances, and lamented the fact that they can only, through these scheduling efforts in various countries, they can only make illegal like 10 or 20 of them a year, yet hundreds of these chemicals are designed every year. There's just no way they can possibly keep up with the continually shifting chemistry of these new psychotropic substances. So they're actually calling for having laws that are more generic, so that just about anything that's psychotropic, anything that's mind-altering, could be quickly scheduled as an illegal drug. And this just brings me to a thought. If we're going to go that way, if the point isn't whether or not the substance causes harm to the user or causes harm to society, if the point is just the substance is psychotropic and therefore it's bad, then maybe we ought to just make everything illegal. Maybe every ingestible substance should be illegal, and then we can maintain a list of just those few things that are legal. Alcohol, tobacco, bananas, aspirin, raspberries, rutabagas, whatever. We'll have a list of what's legal, and then anything else you're forbidden from putting in your body. Now, I think most sensible people would realize that sounds quite ridiculous, but really that's the logical extension of what these people are talking about with respect to the new psychotropic substances, is that if it's brand new and it is a drug, it must automatically be banned whether or not we know it's harmful or not. And of course, it's only through the banning of these drugs in the first place that has led to the development of these new psychotropic substances. People that are trying to get away with using a drug without getting detected for using that drug. How many people on the planet would prefer to use cannabis, but since cannabis shows up in a drug test for so long, they switch to using spice or K2? How many people could be suffering from the deleterious effects of these chemicals when the alternative, the natural alternative, has been never shown to cause an overdose death and has very low risk of side effects? And what side effects there are fairly negligible. It's just frustrating to be here at the United Nations knowing that much of this discussion, the elephant in the room, is cannabis policy. With Uruguay legalizing cannabis, with 4 United States legalizing cannabis, the U.S. Capitol has legalized cannabis, and another 5 states are waiting in the wings to legalize cannabis. But no, most of the discussion was around the new psychotropic drugs, the opioids, because they don't want to get into the conversation about cannabis. It's a losing argument for them. Worldwide, governments are beginning to recognize that this is not the threat that has always been hyped up to be. The ministers from Jamaica and other countries in South America were calling for the rights of indigenous people to be able to use the plants that they find sacred and medicinal. Of course, the Jamaicans referring to ganja. Evo Morales, the president of Bolivia, was here speaking about the native use of coca leaf. Other activists here have been speaking about the use of iboga, the root that makes ibogaine, the virtual cure for heroin addiction. And there was also concern about religious use, especially, again, talking to the Jamaicans about Rastafari and their use. But so far here at the United Nations, the only consensus that was made since the last UN General Assembly special session on drugs, which was all the way back 18 years ago, 1998, was the fact that instead of our 1998 mantra, which was a drug-free world, we can do it, this time they want to aim for a world free from drug addiction. Slight change. We also got the president of Mexico to endorse legalization for medical and scientific purposes, so there has been some slight movement. But folks, the real movement is going to take place at the local and state level as we legalize state after state, and as country after country legalizes, like Canada to the north of us. It will force the hand of these international bodies, and legalization will finally happen.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at RadicalRuss.com.
That's all the time we got for today. Thanks for joining us here live from the UN. We're coming back with the Toker Talk Radio from 420. For everyone here at CannabisRadio.com, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us, and rest in peace, Prince. Until next time, take care of each other, Tokers.